Alright everybody, we are back to animating our default character here, our little guy, and we are going to be rigging him using Adobe Animate's bone tool. First thing we need to do, we're going to make sure that our workspace is set to basic just so that we don't have anything we don't need. Then we're going to go down here to this ellipsis, or the three dots, dot, dot, dot. Find our bone tool. It looks like a cartoon dog bone. And we're just going to move it up anywhere you like onto your toolbar. Close that toolbox with your dot, dot, dot. And now you have your bone tool. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to go up to Edit, Preferences, and select Edit Preferences. In our Preferences window, we're going to go down on the left-hand side and find Drawing. And then we're going to find IK Bone Tool, a checkbox for Auto Set Transformation Point. We want to uncheck that because we don't want to auto set our transformation point. Everything else is fine, and we're going to hit OK. Alright, so the first thing we want to look at here is our character. It is built out of 16 individual symbols that are already named, plus the model sheet, which I have hidden. And if you look, if I use my selection tool to select all of these pieces, you can see these dots here, these circles, which are indicating where our transformation point or anchor points for each of these symbols are. In selection mode, I can move them around, but I can't change where that dot is. If I switch over to the transform tool, free transform, and select, if I select everything, it doesn't show me where each individual dot is, but if I select one thing, it will show me where that anchor point is. So I'm going to zoom in here, Control plus. And now if you're using my default rig here, your anchor points are already set in the correct places, but we'll take a look anyway. So this is the arm here. And our anchor point is placed at the top where we want the shoulder to rotate from. We're going to think of our anchor point like a pin or a brad that you'd put in a paper doll, or a joint on a skeleton. And that anchor point or transformation point, they're both valid terms, is going to show us where it's going to rotate from. So if we move that into the center, for example, it will rotate from the center. If we move it to the bottom, it will rotate from the bottom. For this, we want it to rotate from the top, so we're going to leave it right where it is. But should we need to move pieces around later, we will know that we can grab those anchor points and move them around if necessary. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out. Alright, so let's get started with our bones. We are going to select our bone tool here. You also press M on the keyboard. And we're going to click anywhere inside of our torso symbol and hold that mouse button, left mouse button down. And you will see a bone show up. That is what this little purple line is. And because we turned off that checkbox that sets the transformation point for us, it uses our anchor points as transformation points. So to build our armature, we're going to start from this middle torso, and we're going to draw a bone up to the neck. And when you connect two pieces of your drawing together with a bone, they will move in front of all the other pieces. Because if we take a look down here, we will see that Animate has created an armature layer for us. And if we hide our armature layer, you will see that everything that is connected to that bone is now on the armature layer. It is no longer on the body layer. So it is now in front of everything else. We are going to keep going, starting from where we stopped at the last bone and bringing that up to the head. Then we're going to go from our torso to our shoulders. Our shoulders down to where the elbows would be. And from the elbows to the wrists. And we're basically building a very simplified skeleton here. Starting always from the torso and going out. This is what we usually call a root. So it is like the center of all things. Anytime you want to build a new section, you're always going to start from your root. So I started from my root to go down to my hips, from my hips down to my upper legs to lower legs. Woo. Oh no, not like that. Upper legs to lower legs. Wow. It doesn't want to do that. Alright, so I want to go from this bone to here. There we go. And from that bone to there. Alright. Little trial and error. Totally fine. There we go. And there we are. Alright. So, this is our basic armature. If I select the armature layer, you can see all the bones here. If you want to make your bones a little bit easier to see, you can select your armature layer, go over to your properties window, go over to your frame properties, and scroll down until you find the options. And under the options, you'll see a type and a style. And under style, we want to change that from solid to wire. And that is going to make our bones a little bit easier to see because now they are made up of multiple lines instead of just one line. Okay, so I'm going to close my timeline because we are working 100% on the armature layer, except for that dot that I'm going to delete. Don't worry about that. We're working 100% on our armature layer, so I'm not going to need to change anything on my timeline. So I'm just going to close that so I can zoom in closer on our buddy here. And as I zoom in, I see a problem. This bone was definitely supposed to connect to here and not there. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to click on this bone and I'm going to delete it. And it's going to delete any bone that is attached to it as well. Then I just need to go back to my bone tool and place them in the correct locations. Okay, now my armature looks good. Alright, so if I bring this guy back out, zoom back out, and use my selection tool to grab any of my pieces of my armature, you will see that the bones, which are all connected, are moving around. Perhaps not the way that you would like them to, particularly that bone, which is not correctly connected there. So we're going to go back to our selection tool, find the incorrect bone, delete that, and try this again. No. There we go, there we go. All right. So we have 15 bones now that are connecting our 16 symbols together, and they are all kind of all over the place. And the reason for this is because our bones can basically only do a couple of things. If you select a single bone, and I'm going to select the first one that we drew, go over to its object properties, you'll see a couple of different things. one, the IK bone name, which by default is just going to be IK bone name and then a number. I could name it something if I wanted to. In this case, I'm just going to leave it there. Then we have its location properties, its joint rotation properties, its joint X translation properties, and its joint Y translation properties. And all the way at the bottom, we have spring. We are not going to deal with spring, so I'm just going to close that up. And we're not going to deal with joint X translation or joint Y translation. So I'm just going to close those. However, it's probably good to know that if you do accidentally turn these on, some weird stuff is going to happen. Because joint translation means that the joint is able to move from side to side rather than just rotate. So we want to make sure that joint translation is off for both X and Y. For this, we're going to be looking at joint rotation. Now, when we built out this armature, we were thinking about the human skeleton, or a bipedal skeleton, a skeleton that walks on two legs. And basically what we did is we built it out of bones that work a lot like a chain, like links in a chain. They're all connected together and they all affect each other. Oops, I forgot to turn that joint translation off. There we go. They all affect each other. So for this, if we think about this as the human body, we have 1, 2, 3 bones here that are representing the spine, 2 bones here that are representing our rib cage, collarbone, everything up in our upper torso, and 2 bones here representing our pelvis, or the bones that connect our legs to our upper half. And then of course we have upper arms, upper legs, and lower legs. One of these bones is still not correct. Oh my goodness. All right. So we're thinking about this as a skeleton, and we're thinking about this as a skeleton. If this is our spine, we do not want that to be able to rotate from side to side. That's not really the way spines work. So we are going to take that bone and we're going to go over to its joint rotation property and we're going to turn that off. And that's going to turn off joint rotation for this bone, this bone, this bone, and this little guy here, which is very hard to click on. And now these bones still connect this bone to the torso, but they no longer move. But these bones can still move. And now our body parts stay together on the upper half. Let's turn off joint rotation for these 2 bottom ones. There we go. And now all of our bits stay together. We want to leave joint rotation on for our neck because we do need to be able to rotate our neck from side to side. But we're going to want to change the amount that it can rotate. So starting with our neck, we are going to go over to our object properties, to our joint rotation section, and we're going to click this constrain. And constrain is going to constrain the amount that the joint can rotate. And by default, this particular joint is constrained to -45 degrees on a left offset and +45 degrees on the right offset. Now this is not 45 degrees to the left and 45 degrees to the right. It is, the left offset is how far to the left the bone is allowed, from the left the bone is allowed to rotate, and the right offset is how far from the right the bone is allowed to rotate. So our left offset and our right offset are going to be a negative number and a positive number to total up to 360. So in this case, I want my my joint rotation to be fairly small, because while your neck can rotate quite a bit, it doesn't rotate that much. I'm just going to bring it down to negative 30 and 30. And that's going to be constrained a little bit better. And if I zoom in here with my magnifier tool, you will see this little pie slice, and that pie slice is showing that it's 30 degrees on the right, 30 degrees on the left. All right, so the next thing we're going to constrain is going to be the hip bone, or this bone here, which is pretty flexible, but probably not this flexible. So we're going to select the bone in question, and we are going to set its constraints. It defaults again to negative 45, 45, and while negative 45, 45 is not terrible, we really want our leg to be able to go out further than that. So let's change our left offset to like negative 140. And we'll make the right offset 30. I like nice round numbers. So this person's pretty flexible, but not ridiculously flexible. So if we look at these numbers, negative 140, and as you move the joints around on your armature, you will find that this number may move up and down a little bit. Do not worry about it. It's just a few degrees of rotation, and you're not gonna notice in the long run. So we're gonna look at our left offset of negative 140 and our right offset of 30. We're going to go over here and we're going to reverse those numbers. So it's going to be a left offset of negative 30 and a right offset of 140. And that is going to give you a mirrored bone, basically. They have the same rotations, just in reverse. Now, our knees definitely need some work because this is not correct. So let's go ahead and joint constrain those. And our default is definitely not what we want because, oof, ouch. We're going to turn that left offset down to actually about 5. Your knee doesn't really bend out, but it does bend a little bit. So we're going to give it about 5 degrees out. And then we're going to give it about 140 in, so they can lift their leg up like so. Honestly, you could give it more, 150, 160, if you want to just really be able to bend that leg back. And again, we're going to look at these numbers, 0, 160, and reverse them with our constraint. Negative 160 and 0. And there we go. We have a few other things to constrain. We could constrain the shoulders if we wanted to, and we could constrain the elbows. However, since we're working in 2 dimensions, we want to be able to move our arm up and out, and also in and down. And so we're going to leave our elbow at 360. Whether or not you constrain the joint on your shoulder is up to you. I like to leave it at 360 degrees because there's just more flexibility to it, literally. Being able to put your shoulder in different positions for comedic purposes could be important. And my shoulder can do this. I don't know about yours, but I can actually do this. So I'm just gonna leave my person very flexible here. So to review, we have our neck constrained, the neck rotation constrained, we have the hip or the upper leg constrained, and we have the lower legs constrained. Now, we need to constrain the head and the hands and the feet. But we don't have a bone in those pieces, and we don't have anything to connect a bone to, even if I wanted to build a bone, because I need to connect two symbols together. So what we're going to do is we're going to create ourselves a new symbol that we can use multiple instances of to connect our bone to. So I'm going to open my timeline back up, and I'm going to go back to the layer that I initially drew my body on, which is empty at the moment. And I am going to select my oval tool and draw myself a circle. You can, of course, press Shift to create a perfect circle, but it doesn't matter. And the reason why I want to draw this on my body layer is because if I try to draw anything on my armature layer, it will not let me. It is an IK inverse kinematics pose layer and does not support drawing. So I need to make sure that I have a layer that I can draw on. So now that I have this little circle, I am going to convert it to a symbol. I'm going to name this symbol control point. Control point. And you can name it really anything you want. I like control point because it usually puts it at the top of my symbol list, unless I have a symbol that starts with A or B. Some people like to call them nulls, which is more of a 3D modeling thing, but is still totally valid. But I'm going to stick with control point because I think it gives a better idea of what it is. So now I have a symbol that is going to act as a control point. And if I look in my library, here it is, control point. I'm going to place my first control point above the head. Now I need 4 more, so I'm going to grab the symbol from the library and drag it out. I need one at the tips of each of those fingers and the tips of each of those toes, if this character had fingers and toes, which they do not. We want them to hover a little bit away. You could do even more if you wanted. You just want them to be far enough away that you can connect a bone and still be able to tell where they are. Because the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make them invisible. So I'm going to take my my mouse and I'm going to double click either on the gear symbol next to the word control point or this big preview image at the top. And when I double click, I open up my symbol edit mode. If I go to my properties and look under the object properties for this shape, I'm going to see position and size, all of that is fine, color and style, and shape options. Color and style is what we want to change. This fill is going to be the color, obviously, that it has at the moment. And this is going to be the opacity or alpha of that fill. We're going to change this from a 100% to a 0. And then when I click away, you will see that it is invisible. It has a 0 alpha or a 0% transparency. I can still select it, and it is technically still blue, a blue circle, but it is an invisible blue circle with a 0 alpha. So now that I'm done with that, I'm going to go up here, click my back button to go back to my scene, and now my control points are still selectable but totally invisible. And now I'm going to go ahead and use my bone tool and connect my last 5 bones. So I'm going to go from my neck, from my head to my control point, from my head to my control point, from my hand to my control point, hand to control point, foot to control point, and foot to control point. All right, now I have 5 additional bones, and with these bones I can do some more joint constraints. So I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to start at my the bottom here, and I'm going to select the new bone that I created that is representing the foot, the bone that goes from the foot to the control point here. And if I move that control point around, I can see that that ankle, oof, that ankle is not good. Let's go ahead and go over to our object properties again and constrain that joint rotation so that it makes more sense for an ankle. We're going to do a small amount of movement up. 45 is probably a bit too far, so we'll do, let's do 20. Oops, sorry, that's the wrong one. -20. And then our right offset, I'm just going to drag this over, maybe not quite 90 degrees, maybe 75, 70 degrees. And then we're going to grab this control point and see how that looks. That's fine. A little bit up, a lot of bit down, we're good. So let's look at those numbers again. -20, 70. Flip them around to -70 and 20. And we're all good. All right, next thing is going to be the wrists. When you hit constrain on these, it's going to default to -45, 45. We're just going to make it -90, 90. It's just a simple number, easy to remember. Mostly is accurate because your wrist really only bends up and down about 90 degrees if we're talking about just bending it up and down. So that's fine. You can also leave this at 360 if your character has more flexible wrists. And the last thing that we're going to constrain is the rotation for the head, which, woo, a little bit too much. And we're going to constrain that with the default of, well, yeah, you can keep it at -45, 45. I think I might change it to -30, 30. That feels a little better to me. Okay, so we have our constraints in place, and now if I grab either any of the bones or any of the control points, I should be able to move my rig around like a stop motion character or an action figure, and it should sort of look and act like a human body, or at least like a cartoon version of a human body. You will not be able to move the hips or the torso because those bones have no rotation and they are locked in place. So you should only be able to move the arms, the legs, and the neck and head. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm gonna set my my little guy here back to a somewhat default position. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change how much these joints move depending on which one I grab. So if I grab this control point, the point of grabbing this control point is to move the whole arm. But if you move your arm in real life, if you start from your hand and move your arm in real life, it's not gonna all move at once like that. Again, like I said before, these work like links in a chain, and all of the links in a chain are about the same size and same weight, so they move at the same speed. But the pieces of our body are not the same size or the same weight, so they should be moving at different speeds. I'm going to zoom in here, and we're going to start with our upper right arm. I'm going to select the bone, go over once again to our object properties, and this time I'm going to be looking in our location section. The location section is going to tell you where on the stage the bone is located, its width, and its current angle, as well as if it's pinned in place. We don't want anything pinned in place, just make sure that's never checked. And this is speed, and this is going to change the speed at which the joint is able to move. The speed at which it can rotate, translate, spring, whatever we choose to change, this is going to change how quickly it does that. And since this is our upper arm, and it is a big, heavy muscle for the most part, we are going to lower this speed. And just for easy numbers, we're going to do 25%. And now if I pull up on this, you will see that that upper arm moves much slower, and it seems more like it has a weight to it. I'm going to take the lower arm on that same side and adjust that speed down to 50. And this last bone here representing our hand, I'm going to leave that at 100%. Now you'll see that the movement is looking a little bit more realistic, a little bit more believable, because those pieces look like they are moving with different weights. So this side does not have a speed change. It's very noodly. We want to avoid noodly unless that's what you want from your character. For the most part, we want to avoid noodly because noodly is not believable. For this project, we want to avoid noodly. And you can still get some noodle here, but the noodle it's a weighted noodle. It's a heavy noodle. We're going to go over to the other arm and copy those same values. So top one, 25. Bottom one, 50. The hand stays at 100. And not because this is correct or incorrect, but because it's easy, we're just going to choose those same numbers for the lower limbs. So 25 for the two upper ones, and 50 for the two lower ones, and again 100 for those feet. And the last thing that we are going to change the speed for is going to be the neck and the head. For the neck, I generally take that speed way down. I usually put it at about 5%. And that's just because your neck is a thick, tough muscle with a large bone in it. It is pretty stiff and pretty heavy, and it is not going to be moving around that much. And for the head, I usually put between 10 and 15. I'm just going to do 10. Your head is very heavy, so it's definitely not going to be moving around too much. And honestly, the neck looking a little weird. Might just bring that down to 2, if I'm being honest here. But these numbers, again, they are not set in stone. You just have to think about your own character. Which parts are biggest and heaviest? Which parts will move the fastest? That is what you want to think about when you are adjusting the joint speed. And the last thing we're going to do is we are going to, there we go. we are going to make sure that all of the pieces of our rig are overlapping correctly or arranged correctly. And I can tell you right now, they are not. If I move my arm, it is in front of the hips, but behind the torso. And we don't want that. So we're going to, using the selection tool, select the whole arm, and we can see these blue boxes around our selected objects, including our control point, are showing that these are selected. I'm going to right click, go down to my arrange, bring to front. And now the arm is in front of all of the other pieces. And I'm going to do the same thing with this arm. If it's easier for you to select it this way, you can always just pull that arm out. Bam. All four of those are selected. Arrange, bring to front. Okay. I have some other overlapping issues here. I want the neck to be in front of the torso, but behind the head. So I'm going to select my neck, arrange, and bring forward. And bring forward is going to bring it forward one layer. And I already knew that it was just one layer behind. And for the head, I am going to go to arrange and bring to front. All right, everything else looks fine to me. You might want to layer your character a little different. You might not like having, for example, the lower legs behind the upper legs. Maybe you want the lower legs in front, or you want the feet in front. That is up to you. As long as when you do your animation, all of your overlapping makes sense. For example, if you lift your leg up and you need that leg to be behind your arm, all the pieces of your leg should be behind the arm. And if you want to cover your character's face up with the arm, then you're going to need to make sure that the arm is in front of the head. Bring to front. There it is. Oop. We need that arm to also be in front of the head, and there we go. Conversely, if you want the arm to be behind the head, you need to make sure that the head is in the front. For example, if I want him to, I don't know, put his hand behind his head, I need to make sure that that head is in front of that arm. But I want the arms in front. Alrighty, and that is our rig. Now let's go over a few little things that might have happened when you were putting your rig together. One thing that might have happened is you might have ended up accidentally moving your pieces. Let's just say somehow this got disconnected. And when you move your rig, everything is broken. This is an easy fix. You'll see that the rotation points of your joints are attached to the anchor point of your symbol. So all you need to do is move your symbol back to where that anchor point makes sense to rotate from. So I know that this is my wrist, so I'm going to connect my hand to my wrist where that anchor point is. And if I need to, I can also move my control point back down so that everything lines up. Remember, if you use your free transform tool, you are going to be editing your symbols. And if you use your selection tool, you're going to be moving your armature. And that is it for the rig. Pretty straightforward, and hopefully you only have to do it once, because you will be able to swap out these symbols with any symbols that you like, as long as they fit together and there are the right number of them. You should be good to go. So there is your rig all put together. Have fun.